these large entertainment companies can no longer actually afford the economics to compete against Amazon and Apple, which never ever need to make money from actually content creation because they have like a new device called like Vision Pro over at Apple, great example, where they need content in order to drive adoption of a device that's brand new. So that content is worth more to them, especially if they can do exclusive content for those new goggles that Apple is trying to drive adoption for, worth a lot more. And you never need to make money from content. As we know from these standalone content companies, they're all losing money thanks to streaming. So the economics have really gotten compressed in content. So we think they need to be purchased by larger companies that have sister subsidiaries that can fund them.
Now, is this Laura? Paul Sweeney tells me you're his favorite analyst, so you must know a lot more about this industry than even he does. But when I hear about a device company looking to buy content for exclusivity, I think instantly about Microsoft and its attempt to buy Activision, which right now looks pretty good, but it didn't look that great for a while, and it still would be a problem if they wanted Call of Duty exclusively on the Xbox. Won't this be, an issue for the FTC and for other regulators if, for example, an Apple tried to buy a Disney?
Yeah, so good question on the regulatory front. First of all, as you know, these kinds of things take multiple years. So let's see who's in the president's seat, because that person appoints the head of the FTC, the DOJ. So if we end up with a Republican president, then suddenly like all bets are off in terms of allowing consolidation. Even if we stay with the Democratic regime, I think one of the differences, remember when Comcast was allowed to buy NBC? They said, look, you can have no exclusive content on Comcast rails, meaning the video, like the wires, for 7 years. And after that, you can. So they have a way to make behavioral changes to make sure they can just force Apple to sell Disney content to everybody at the same price. But as you know, if Apple buys Disney's content, it's a transfer price. So they can double the price of Disney content. And by the way you make money in content is sell it to everybody. So Apple really isn't incented to not sell it for a price to everybody. It's just that if I was Apple, I would have those fabulous storytellers at Pixar make 3-minute shorts that are only available on, and probably could offer it to anybody else, but who else is buying a 3-minute short from Pixar? Probably nobody, except for putting it on the goggles, I would guess.
That's legit what goes around comes around, right? Because Pixar, Steve Jobs sold Pixar to Disney. Right. And it would be hilarious if Tim Cook then bought it back.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I so agree with that.
Well, and part of it, and so much of that happened because of Iger's relationship with Steve Jobs, right? And I do think about Iger and his relationships with lots of folks. Having said that, one thing that Disney, Laura, is so well known for buying some kind of content and putting it at the theme parks and making movies and selling stuff and blah, blah, blah. Is that a good strategy for Disney?
For Disney or for Apple?
Well, for Disney, does it still continue to be a good strategy in terms of how they do it?
Look, I think the biggest question for Disney is how do you invest in this company today when you do not have a permanent CEO and you do not have a permanent CFO? And as we know from the failed attempt of Disney trying to replace Iger for a decade and then picking a guy that didn't last 2 years, this issue of succession at the Walt Disney Company is a really hard problem to solve. It becomes an easier problem to solve if it's a division of a larger company, because now you just need a division head. You don't need a world-class politician, which is what Disney requires at the top level. So I think it solves one of the big problems, which is it gives Disney a more permanent management structure and a clear sense of strategic vision if it's part of something larger. Right now, you have no idea what you're buying because you don't know who's in charge.
Do you think Bob was brought back to sell the company?
To sell it? No, I think it was brought back because the guy in the seat, Bob Chapek, was destroying value at the speed of light, and Wall Street had lost all confidence in him.
Is there any way to make money if they stay in this business? I mean, is the streaming business, can that be profitable? I always think about ESPN. I would pay so much money if I could stream all of ESPN's content without having to buy a cable TV package.
So maybe, but the problem is, as you know, media bundles double economics. So when you unbundle ESPN, you know that destroys value because now they're not getting paid $12 a month for every cable subscriber, whether or not they use it or not. The minute you unbundle it, you've got to take that price up 2-3x. So suddenly you may say today you'd be willing to buy it, but if the price point was $100 a month, you might not be so excited.
Then I'd rather get the cable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the answer is capitalism writ large has a lot of trouble funding negative growth businesses. And right now that linear TV ecosystem is really weighing on the revenue growth line of these big conglomerates like Warner Brothers and Disney and Paramount. And if you can put capital to work in something that's clearly growing, that's worth a lot more than something that has these declining, that has declining revenue or just single growth.
So Laura, do you anticipate something coming out of Sun Valley, or what are you watching for to come out about Disney?
I hope they all get bought. I hope they all merge and they all get bought. And I hope Sherry Redstone sells because she's the smallest. But I hope they all get purchased. And I think the good news is, I mean, there's a serious brain trust. Like, John Malone is a large personal shareholder of Warner Brothers. I think all these guys are deal guys, right? What's a film? It's a bunch of deals. It's a bunch of contracts. So they're all deal guys at some level. And so I hope they all understand that they've got to get bigger to save costs, or they've got to sell out to somebody that doesn't need to make money in the content business. But they are not, I do not think these are standalone companies for the next 3 years. I do not think they can be. Wall Street
including Netflix. Netflix has to get bought too. Who's the taker for that?
Well, it could just merge with Warner Brothers, or it could buy Paramount and actually have a library of IP rather than always renting other people's IP. All of these companies make more money together than they do separately.
Hey, last year the boy that everybody talked about was Elon Musk, right? And Twitter.
The boy.
I can say
Imagine if it were reversed.
I know.
Okay.
Hey, we women have dealt with a lot for years and decades.
Fair enough.
Having said that, now we're all talking about Meta and Threads. What's your take on that, Laura?
So as you know, we have we have an underperform on Meta because we're saying, look, we don't think its social network business has a terminal value because we think TikTok's going to win. But I got to say, I sort of think Elon Musk, in blowing up Twitter in a series of bad execution moves, actually has left a huge hole in the market where there was clearly consumer demand for a platform that met that, but it couldn't generate ad revenue because of the fact that he sort of let in the crazies once he got in and didn't have content moderation. So advertisers abandoned ship. So there is a need by advertisers to meet that need. And guess what? Facebook is best in class. It's sort of guaranteeing walled garden access to premium advertisers. He has 1 million advertisers, so he's got brands all the way down to long tail. I think Meta does that really well. So, and we know they're good at ripping off other people's ideas because they did it with Snap and Instagram. So they're
and with Facebook, that was Friendster.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay, great. So that's their core skill. Fast following and improving on somebody else's idea. So I think Elon Musk might have just lost all of his financiers $40 billion.